welcome Congresswoman-elect Rashida Tlaib. So, you're not a member of Congress yet, so can I call you Rashida? Is that okay?
Yeah, please
All
do.
Right.
I prefer it.
Now, let me know, though, if I get out of line.
No,
You can
it's
always
okay.
smack me aside.
I know
the
your
head.
dad now. So.
Yeah, exactly. You know my
Yeah.
parents. So,
I can call him.
this is not a joke. She does.
I would actually.
I will tell you, my dad is a minister in Detroit and runs a community organization, part of the city. And he said he was not surprised when the Congresswoman-elect won her race because he said she was the person who called him the most. So this is exciting. So what you need to know about her, if you don't know, that she was a state representative for 3 terms. She focused on community issues the entire time while she was there. She went to, this doesn't mean anything to anybody who's not from Detroit, but she went to Southwestern High School, which if you're from Southeast Michigan, you know is one of the biggest basketball powerhouses of the 80s and 90s. So she was there.
We were really good at football too. And we won the national debate championship that year too, my class year.
And she has 2 boys,
Yes.
right? And the oldest of 14
Yes.
kids?
Mashallah, yeah.
Wow, this is, that's a lot. That's a house with a lot of activity.
It's a voting block. Jamal.
Yes.
It's a voting block.
We have 5 boys in my house, so that was a lot of activity. I can't imagine 14. All right, so welcome. I want to give you a chance just to kind of say something for the audience about, to start off, how you were in a race with 6 people, including one of them whose last name was Conyers, another one who was a city council president, a majority African-American district, and you won.
Yeah.
How did it happen?
I'll tell you, that's the part of the story that's so incredible that I think people don't realize is probably gives me the most hope and inspiration is the fact that, you know, myself and Ilhan Omar and many of the women of color, this beautiful rainbow of color of women coming in, you know, I wasn't elected in a predominantly, you know, Muslim or Arab district. This is predominantly African-American white community, less than 5% Arab-American community. And it's spectacular that, you know, someone like myself and this community could have made history like this. And that makes this, you know, journey and the fact that I've made history and the fact that I represent this district where I was raised even more spectacular. You know, I don't underestimate the direct human contact. Most people that know me and my activism in Detroit know you know, I don't, not any mailer, robocall, ad on the television screen, any of that could ever replace the direct human contact that you have with people. And all of you know that do grassroots work, that door knock when you're talking to folks, it's not like you made an appointment, you're just there. They're in their moment and what's going on in their lives, and here I am. And that connection instantly happens. And I just kept doing it. We did 55,000 doors within only like a 6-month period. And yeah.
Those
and
are
it's
all
funny.
The organizers out there who
well,
understand
the
what
organizers should know. You should see as soon as you file and run or whatever. I had did a few fundraisers, and I was like, okay, I have enough to maybe hire 12 community organizers. And the local newspaper was calling like, you know, we don't understand. We just saw your campaign finance report. Why do you have so many? You know, what is all these people were here? I said, oh, they're field organizers. They're on the doors every single day, and that's just how we were able to do it. 60% of what we were able to raise went towards just field and direct contact.
And what were the issues that really animated that campaign? Detroit's, in your district, Julie, is very varied. I mean, we talk about it being Detroit, but it's really a big chunk of kind of the southeastern Michigan area.
I could tell, you know, the consistency on the doors, and in different ways they would say it, but they would be like, I was like, anything I should be, he says, just, are you going to sell us out? And I'm like, what do you know, and it was a different way, but they just, are you going to be one of those that after election, you're just going to forget about us? Are you going to be one of those that votes with corporations? Are you going to be one of those that forgets we pay the highest car insurance in the nation? Are you going to sell us out? And that was the consistency at the door. And I can tell you what set me apart from the 5 other candidates in the race. is I wasn't going to only just vote the right way, but I was going to help people through everyday issues. So I'm creating 3 neighborhood service centers throughout my district. That's how I'm going to stay rooted. That's where I get my bill ideas. In the legislature, that's probably my biggest accomplishment and legacy was creating the neighborhood service center, which continues now as the Mary Turner Center for Advocacy. That's where I got the mortgage fraud idea. I mean, a teacher came into the center and saw the sign outside, and she just came in and said, I'm a victim of mortgage fraud, and this is what happened to me. And I was like, why did this happen to you? And I called the prosecutor's office and said, Rashida, there is no law to, that criminalizes mortgage fraud. And I was like, that's ridiculous. And so those are the things that I think like set me apart from my colleagues. And people may not know this. Congressman John Conyers was my congressman for, 50 years. Even with redistricting, he remained my congress member. And he was very courageous. And he voted against the Patriot Act when it was unpopular too. He voted against the Iraq War when it was unpopular too. And that kind of courage that he, put at the forefront, he didn't care, if the majority of his caucus was voting a certain way. And that kind of is in me as well. And that was something that even in the legislature, when folks said, leave the billionaire alone, that was allowing these massive trucks to go through your neighborhood, I said, never. I can't believe you are not as pissed off as I am that this is happening. And so I think, again, that like shined and people got that from me. And it's interesting, to this day, people still can't pronounce my name, Jamal. They're like Sharita, Rashida, but they'll be like, oh, you're the Koch girl. And I'm like, oh, that sounds bad. But I went after the Koch brothers, yes.
Tell them the Koch story.
So this is incredible. So before Flint happened, now you got to get me all my,
so before. It's both K-O-C-H and C-O-K.
Yeah. So before Flint happened in Michigan, I want to say a year before that or 2 years before that, I had gotten a call that there was these black piles on the Detroit riverfront. Massive piles, 40 feet high. I'm sure your dad told you about it. And it was, this black cloud of dust, and I didn't realize what was going on. And I saw the trucks come from Marathon Oil Refinery, which I grew up, that refinery in my backyard. And it was the fact that they were bringing tar sands in from Canada to this petroleum refinery, and they were producing these little pebbles like petroleum coke. And the state said to me, when I said, this is unbelievable, do they have a fugitive dust plant? Do you have permits? What's going on? They illegally dumped, with no permits, onto that same billionaire I went after who pretended that he didn't know it was there. And I was like, yeah, right. He would literally evict his own mother, knowing him, from that property if he knew about it.
And to be clear, this is the guy who owns the Ambassador Bridge.
Yeah,
If you've ever been to Detroit and you cross the bridge to go to Canada or seen that picture, that is owned by a private company, which is another whole scandal.
Who went to jail because he doesn't follow the law for a day, and was like celebration through the streets. But one of the things that I just didn't take that as an answer when they said it's not toxic. There's nothing we can do about it. And I said, that's ridiculous. It is toxic. It used to be on the EPA toxic list before they lobbied to get it off, these industry. I knew there was carcinogenic, all these kinds of toxins in there. And so it was a resident who was like, I wish we could test it ourselves. And I was like, that is a great idea. So without planning, my director of constituent services, Larissa, was like, what are you looking for? I was like, do we have any Ziploc bags? And she's like, underneath the cupboard. So she's like, where are you going? I said, I'm going to walk. And I walked from the service center. That's how close it was to the service center. And went right to the riverfront. It's industrialized, so it's not like your fancy riverfront. So it's pretty industrialized. And went over these tracks, a bunch of these gray piles, and got Ziploc bags of the petroleum coke and got it independently tested and released the findings. I got it at an independent, nonpartisan lab, this nonprofit organization. And right after that, that's when the mayor and everybody else got on board and removed the piles from the riverfront.
So you take hands-on government to another level.
And you should see Jamal. People are like, she's crazy. She's one of those, oh my God, she's a state representative. Like, what is she doing? I was like, yeah, you try to get those removed now. Like, that's what you have to do. And
so you talk about, we have a lot of conversation in Washington about climate change.
Yeah.
You talk about environmental justice, and this sort of makes it real for people on the ground. How do you see playing out environmental issues? This is a good story, but how do you see environmental issues played out while you're in Congress?
I mean, I think, one of even just being there for Congress school, or what we call orientation, it's pretty evident that I don't think people understand the true impact of doing nothing. I know 1 of 5 children have asthma in my district. We have the highest rate of asthma hospitalization alone, just where those piles were. I have the 3rd poorest congressional district in the country. And they keep continuing authorizing air permits for my neighborhoods and continue to, just not feel like we deserve some sort of right to breathe clean air. We have the issue around water quality. I mean, I think 60 out of the 80 schools that have been tested in Detroit Public Schools now does not have clean drinking water. And it just continues to unfold to see now the impact. And so for me, I'm gonna have to bring those stories, right? I want my families back home and my residents back home to feel like they have a seat at the table and that they have a voice there. They can never really always be able to afford to come here and testify before hearings or understand this process as much. And so for me to be able to kind of bring all of that with me every single day when I do fight for environmental justice issues.
So you said that you have one of the poorest districts. The number I saw was about 30% of people are below the poverty line in your district. How do you balance, or maybe you don't balance, but how do you balance the interests of those 30% of people with the amount of corporate investment that's taking place right now as Detroit kind of gentrifies and changes?
Yeah, and many people here might be working on this issue, but before I actually filed to run, I was the lead person that worked on community benefits agreements. And I actually got a ballot measure on the City of Detroit ballot initiative with Equitable Detroit Coalition and the Detroit's People's Platform. I was kind of their attorney. We worked and created what we call Rise Together Detroit, and we said enough is enough. We had introduced an ordinance that said if you got a certain amount of public subsidy or a big tax break, then you had to be able to do a legally binding contract with the host community. And I always, when people say, well, Rashida, we already do that. We're the council members, we're the mayors. I said, but, I'm on my, 5th mayor in 8 years? Mayors come and go. City council members come and go. Just watch the turnovers. And what doesn't go away is the actual residents, the neighborhoods, they stay there. And that's who we need to be investing in having at the table. So I'm a big proponent of the community benefits agreement process, a legally binding one, not the conversion of let's just meet and provide these little trinkets of stuff that is not sustainable. I mean, we've been fighting to this day from billionaires like Dan Gilbert and others that want to do all this investment and development in Detroit, but they're for-profit development. And they're development where it's not a win-win. 70% of the people that work in the city of Detroit don't live in the city. 60% of my residents, 60% of all Detroiters that live in the city of Detroit work outside of the city of Detroit. Those numbers are evident that it's not a win-win. And so we need to shift that, and that's the way I believe it needs to be, is having actual host neighborhoods at the table.
You also ran on Medicare for All. Is that something you think will help your residents?
Oh, absolutely. I believe in universal health care, and one of the things that I struggle with, and yes, there should be some sort of balance, but Congress is about people, government's supposed to be about people, and so when you have corporations like the health insurance industry who were part of drafting the Affordable Care Act, and maybe that's why it's not perfect. That's the truth. And so when you have that kind of tainting of the process and so forth, I do think we end up leaving a lot of people out. And so with Medicare for All, and as we move forward, I hope that we as we move forward towards real universal health care, that we make sure that it's about those that are not in there for the for-profit element of it. And I really do think that we're getting closer and closer to it. People never ever thought that this even would be an agenda issue, but many of us ran on this issue, and we won because of that issue.
So I have a sticker that I keep on my computer. It says, "Detroit never left."
Yeah. Thank you.
So people say Detroit is back. Detroit
yeah,
never
Detroit
left.
can't. Detroit come back. I'm like, we didn't go nowhere. What are you guys talking about? Yeah, it's true.
So everybody else is back, right? Detroit's been.
Yeah.
But the question I have, we're talking about gentrification a little bit. The mayor didn't support you. A lot of the other big city leaders didn't support you.
I wasn't the chosen candidate because I can't be controlled, I guess.
Right. So housing is a big issue as people begin to move back into cities like Detroit. We're seeing it here in Washington, D.C. I think a lot of communities around the country are having the same. Atlanta's having a very similar issue. what do we do about affordable housing so people don't have to move out as other residents move in?
And we all as activists need to be careful when we say affordable housing, because sometimes it's defined in a certain way that's not really low-income housing. And what I can tell you is, I'm going to support the grassroots work that's already been done about creating a housing trust fund in Detroit right now. It's not funded. And when Ford Motor Company came and bought this beautiful historic, let's hopefully be beautiful, but to me it's always this iconic, the train station. It's this historic train station in Detroit. And they came, and we're 3 years out from bankruptcy. I think we only have maybe $500 million or something or so cash in hand, or something really, really small. They want half of that towards this for-profit development. And I said, great, but can you maybe help provide the seed money for the Housing Trust Fund? Instead, the mayor's office came up with their own, they called it a Housing Trust Fund, but they gave it a different, sexy name. And they said, look, we did fund it. I said, no, that Housing Trust Fund doesn't go through City Council. It just goes through the mayor's office. And that's where the disconnect happens, where we don't have that direct accountability that happens. And the Housing Trust Fund is all intended, because if you look at my district, Jamal, less than half of my families own their own home. The biggest issue right now is they're paying way more, the percentage of 30, they're paying way more of what the income is coming in for rent right now. It's so excessive. And so the Housing Trust Fund was an idea to basically try to get, general fund dollars to go towards that, towards making sure that we have everyone has equal access to housing opportunities and low-income housing and affordable rental properties. Because right now, I can see my city just changing so dramatically and so quickly. Mayor Coleman Young, who's our mayor for 22 years, believed in this progressive justice model for housing, where you mixed in. So you had maybe the low-income housing, but across the street was 80-20. So, and that's how you did it. And it really did help elevate people out of poverty. Now you have people getting pushed. So the low-income housing or subsidized housing now, those are being shut down after 20 years, and they're like, okay, we're not going to apply for the HUD. We're going to make them the bougie condos or whatever they are, and pushing out the poverty. And to me, if you look at even the seeds or the foundation of why we even had the rebellion in Detroit, it was because people pushed us out and just allowed the poverty to increase and the discrimination to increase.
You just mentioned Ford Motor Company. General Motors announced that it's going to lay off some employees and close plants. How do you, as a new member of Congress, engage on that with the company, as well as helping the residents who may be losing their jobs?
There's accountability here. We did a lot, from destroying a neighborhood in Hamtramck, Poletown, to the number of tax breaks that we've given to GM. And I come from the Motor City. I mean, this is, when it comes to the big three, it's like whatever you want, the red carpet. Now we're kind of waking up to the fact that we can't do that anymore. And that's where I'm consistently pushing the community benefits agreement process. You want to get our public money. This is money comes out of school aid, comes out of city services. This is real money that we could be collecting, because they'll say to you, and you're at your city council meetings or your local, oh, well, it's not a check, Rashida. I said, yeah, but it's money we're deferring and saying we're not going to collect. So it is very much us handing over a check. And we don't ask anything of tangible, anything in return, because they say jobs. Well, one, jobs don't fix cancer. Jobs hasn't been able to really elevate a lot of us out of poverty. We got to have multiple jobs. There's so many things that we have to be pushing up against. And so I know the CEO, Mary Bart is going to be there, I think, tomorrow. And I'm going to ask those questions of, you're in the business, right? I mean, you understand that as a contract that we gave all this up in exchange of the promise that you'll continue to, obviously employ, but also be this kind of corporate neighbor. And now you're abandoning us after we did everything possible to help you thrive, to give you a home, and now you're turning your back on us.
So the person who sounds like he agrees with you about dealing with corporate subsidies is President Trump. What happened?
I don't know, his intentions are different, I think.
What if he calls you and asks you for your support? as he deals with the company and tries
Look,
to
I don't know what I would be
his...
supporting, right? I don't know what, I mean, he says things, it's like he legislates through Twitter, so I'm not really sure. I need to see something and understand what he's proposing.
Would you go meet with them? Would you go to the White House?
I mean, of course, I would meet with anybody. Everyone should know that about me. I will meet with anyone. I'm a person that, even if I disagree, I'll use a little bit of humor to kind of get over the anger. But I very much understand that he is a different kind of human being, and well, I'm trying to be nice. In the one thing that everybody keeps saying, what am I going to work on with him, is I really believe in the rule of law. Like, I believe that there's a way to do things without committing crimes and without and so and it's true. You all have to understand, I've watched billionaires literally disrespect, find those loopholes, do everything possible without following the law in my city for years. And that's what we have right now. If you come to my district, I always do what I'm going to create this tax abatement tour of my district so people can see these little islands that were created with our money and how the poverty outside of the boundaries of development is so concentrated, so profound. It's unbelievable to me that we allow it to continue to happen. So going back to, I think President Trump is, I think he's not going to be happy that somebody like me is going to talk about accountability in a way, just like he wants to hold GM accountable. I need to hold him as well accountable to a lot of things as well. So,
do you think that President Trump's engaging in a culture war?
I don't know what he's doing. I think there's so much, even when I watch national media outlets, it's baffling because we're all guessing. It's all guessing, what is in his mind? What do you think that tweet was about? See that letter, Sessions' letter? He probably forced him. It's like we're all guessing. And that's the thing that I think.
There's some things he is doing. He was taking children away from their parents at the border.
Yes.
He did send the troops to the border in a politicized military exercise.
I mean, he's talking about creating his own media outlet.
Taking over Voice of America.
Yes. My first gift to my new members of Congress, the freshman class, the Democrats, is a book this amazing group put together called The Case to Impeach President Trump. And in there, you can see from what President Nixon did to a number of kinds of actions, how they so much integrate or are very much related to what President Trump is doing today. I can tell you that I think there is so much more courage and moral compass with this new class I've never seen before, but maybe because I'm on the inside, I don't know if you all feel it, but know this, when I say something and I get a couple of the women next to me I'm like, okay, I'm not alone. This is great. So just know and be hopeful that there are folks that are going to be calling out, not only caging children, but a number of things that he's doing on a number of fronts, especially regarding, to me, regarding the big tax break he gave to corporations.
Well, you have a front row seat on this. They're going to have us close in a second. But you have a front row seat on this, and I want to really get your opinion here. Because President Trump won Michigan. He won some particularly white, disaffected workers. You've got a lot of those workers who are in your district outside the city of Detroit, yet they've got the first Muslim American woman, one of the two first Muslim American women in Congress.
Yeah.
How do you navigate with a president who's willing to have a Muslim ban, send troops to the border? I mean, he really does go after issues of race as a polarizing weapon. What do you do to combat that?
Look, I truly believe he's racist. And it's probably controversial. He is. It's in his policies. It's in his words. And the fact of the matter is he's still our president. Until he is not, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to still hold him accountable. I mean, that's my duty and that is what people are probably elected us to do. But I can tell you just also, when folks tell you that we turned red district into blue, don't let them feel like we somehow flipped Trump supporters. No. Michigan, 4 years ago, 3.1 million people came out. 4.3 million people came out this time around. If we increase voter turnout by 2% alone in Detroit, by 2%, if we increased it the presidential election, he would have not won Michigan. So please do not think my state is somehow red. It's because they weren't inspired to come out and vote, and that's something we're going to continue to change, hopefully, in the next cycle. So.
I think the folks here found you to be inspiring. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you again.
No, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Rashida Tlaib.
Thank you.
Congresswoman-elect for Michigan.
Thank you.